Hey everyone, how's it going? Today I want to talk a little bit about a common problem I see in a lot of people, including myself, which is excessively sticking out the ribs, especially when reaching overhead. So what generally happens is because we lack the mobility or the core strength in either our arms or in our chest or uh, our hands, right? We will compensate in order to facilitate getting our hands over our head by sticking out the chest, right? Because when we do this, we can get those arms into that position a little bit easier. It's more challenging to be completely stacked, everything in line, top to bottom, and then raise your arms over your head if you're lacking some mobility. So one of the things, a good test of this is to get against the wall like this. And the further your feet are away from the wall, the easier this will be. The closer your feet are to the wall, the harder it'll be. So the ultimate test is heels right up against the wall. I hope you can see my heels are right up against the wall. Back up against the wall. Back of your head up against the wall. Shoulders against the wall. And now you can probably already feel, most people like myself, I can feel that the bottom, my lower back is not against the wall anymore. Like I need to, in this position, really focus on contracting my core and pushing my lower back into the wall. And even if I do it really hard with everything pinned back, I still can only partially get my lower back against the wall. So to make it a little bit easier, you can scoot your feet out a little bit against the wall, maybe 3-4 inches. So your heels are away from the wall a little bit. Now put everything up against the back, and you can up against the wall, shoulders, back of the head, upper back, everything up against the wall, and you can probably feel a little bit better here. So like if I can put less effort into my core tightening to get my lower back against the wall, right? And not everything's gonna be perfectly against the wall, but you should feel contact with the wall for most of your body, your upper half of your body, from like the top of your glutes all the way up to your shoulders, all the way up to your head, right? Now, the test here is actually raising your hands. So if you can't, even with your feet away from the wall, maybe like I said, probably like 3 or 4 inches away from the wall, everything up against the wall, and you still can't, get there with most of your back against the wall, putting your hands over your head is probably going to be a disaster, right? You're probably not going to be able to do it. So if this is you and you're 3 to 4 inches away from the wall, you're still having a hard time feeling that lower back against the wall, even when you really contract and focus on doing it, then what you should do is move even further away from the wall. So maybe now you're like I'm 8 inches or so away from the wall. Now if I do it, like even without even trying, I can feel my lower back against the wall, right? So what you want to do then, if you're like 8 inches against the wall and it's pretty easy, then scoot back a couple inches, maybe 5 inches, 4 inches, somewhere around there, until it's a little bit challenging, right? You really have to focus on getting your lower back against the wall. And you really have to like contract your core to get there, right? And what you're gonna do is sit there and you're gonna do a couple contractions. So you're gonna sit there and focus and contract your midsection and push that lower back against the wall and hold it, count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and release, right? And then take a little break and then go ahead and do it again. Everything up against the wall, contract, get that lower back touching, hold, contract that core. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and do it 3, 4, 5 times. It doesn't take that long. And what you're trying to do is ingrain that contraction pattern into your mind, right? So now, and you're going to progress this, right? So you're going to do that for a few weeks until you're 5 inches away from the wall, and you go back and you feel like, I can feel the back of the wall. Great. Without trying, right? Now you're going to get a little bit closer. Now you're 2 inches, 3 inches away from the wall. Do it again. Is it still hard? Okay, stick here. Do that, repeat that 3 or 4 times at that distance. Do that for a few weeks. Once that becomes easy, hopefully you get to the point where you're now heels up against the wall, everything up against the wall, and contract and really try and get that back of the wall and do that. Eventually you're gonna get to the point where hopefully you're gonna get your heels up against the wall. It can really pretty easily feel the back of the wall with your lower back. Now, what you're gonna try and do is test out that overhead position, right? So I'm gonna have to scoot a little bit away because I'm afraid I'm not gonna be able to do this, right? So I'm gonna scoot a little away, get that contact with my lower back against the wall. And I'm gonna try to raise my hands here. So you may only get to this position and you'll notice your back comes off. Or you may be able to get up a little bit, you notice your back comes off. Or you may be able to get up a little bit more, but the back comes off, right? What you want to do is be able to do the best way possible. Go from hands on the side of the wall, like this, lower back against the wall, and see how far you can raise these hands, keeping contact against the wall with everything. And when you get to a point where things start to fall apart, or it's really hard, you're going to stop there. And you're going to say, okay, this is where I'm at. I'm going to stop here with my hands, and I'm going to do it again. Contract, push that lower back against the wall, and hold that. Okay? And what you're going to do eventually is hopefully get to a nice range of motion where you can get your hands, at least above your head a little bit and still maintain that contact against the wall, right? And even for me, I have a hard time doing it with my feet all the way against the wall. It's not the end of the world. Some people are going to be better, some people are not. But the point is what you're trying to do is ingrain that tight core and get this nice stacked position while still maintaining the ability to reach overhead and not compensate by going, I'm going to reach overhead. Oh, I'm going to stick my chest out to get there, right? And instead, you're going to say, I'm going to reach overhead, but I'm going to keep it everything in line, nice and stacked, right? And even I'm not the best at that, but the goal is to get as good as you possibly can, right? So that's a little tip, a trick, something to work on, a little bit of progression. Just ingraining that. It's less of a mobility thing at this point. It's more of just ingraining the tightness of the core. Because I think a lot of people think, I'm rambling here, but I think this is important. A lot of people think when they're going to push some weight overhead, right, they forget that this is an important piece of the puzzle, right? It's hard to push a bunch of weight over your head with this all just being floppy and relaxed, right? If you stack this and you lock it into place, really squeeze your abs, squeeze your glutes, squeeze your legs, squeeze those feet into the floor and then push overhead, you're going to be much more stable and be able to push much more weight over your head, right? And again, the goal for most people isn't how much weight can I push over my head. I mean, overhead press is a very good lift. But for most people, they're just worried about picking up their luggage from the ground and putting it in the overhead compartment in the plane, or putting away their groceries in the cabinet above the fridge or whatever, right? They're just trying to do simple things. But if you lock your body in place and be very stable, think of this as a tree trunk, very, very stable, locked into place, including the core, because you forget about everything below. I'm thinking above, I'm pushing my shoulders and my arms, they got to be strong, but really it's everything else down below that's supporting that needs to be strong too, right? So your core especially needs to be locked in, those glutes need to be engaged, your legs need to be driving into the floor, pushing the floor. I like to push my toes into the floor as I push things overhead, right? So just tip and trick, get that locked core, ingrained position into your mind, and that will help you gain more mobility overhead in a more stable position.